You are listening to Small Business Straight Talk with your host, Amber De La Garza. Amber is a sought-after coach, trainer, speaker, and writer who gives small business owners the straight talk on productivity, time management, business systems, leading your teams, strategic decision-making, and mindset. No BS, fluff, or overused jargon. Just actionable strategies to get results and succeed in business. And here is your host, Amber De La Garza, the productivity specialist.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to the Small Business Straight Talk podcast. Today is episode 353, The Pathway to Better Bookkeeping with Misa Bacon. If you're a small business owner who wants to learn effective business strategies, improve time management, and elevate productivity to maximize profits, reduce stress, and make time for what matters most, then you're in the right place, and I'm so glad you've joined me. I'm really looking forward to you meeting our guest, Misa Bacon. Misa is the founder and CEO of Perfectly Kept Books and your go-to bookkeeping and QuickBooks Pro. She is on a mission to help women entrepreneurs feel confident and in control of their finances. Recognizing that bookkeeping can be daunting, she creates a calming, fun experience that feels like chatting with a supportive friend. Her Texas warmth shines through, making complex financial discussions approachable and stress-free. Driven by the desire to raise her creative daughter in a world of empowered women, Misa champions women-owned businesses, providing empowering bookkeeping services and building strong financial foundations for their success. When she's not crunching numbers, she loves hanging out with family, getting lost in a good book, enjoying a movie, jamming out to music, or simply relaxing at home. I was really looking forward to bringing Misa on to talk about the intricacies of bookkeeping, asking questions like, when should you be doing the bookkeeping? When should you be outsourcing it? How can you better understand your reports? How can you better understand the mechanisms of what's happening inside QuickBooks so that you can get curious, so that you feel comfortable navigating your own books? And I am really happy to tell you that she had all the answers, and it was a great conversation that truly was a very empowering conversation about wanting to share the knowledge so that you feel as though you are in control of your books, even if you want somebody helping you with the bookkeeping. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to make sure that you've taken my Next Level Business Owner quiz. If you're tuning in each week to Small Business Straight Talk, then you should take this quiz so that you know better which episodes to go back to and listen to. We have over 350 episodes, and with my Next Level Business Owner quiz, you'll take 3 short minutes to find out what's most holding you back from taking your business to the next level, and then you'll get a curated, personalized playlist of the specific episodes that address those challenges. What could be more efficient, effective, and productive than knowing exactly what podcast episodes you should be listening to that have the exact resources you need? Head on over to amberdelagarza.com/quiz. And now let's meet our guest and get to the straight talk. Welcome to the show, Misa. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm really looking forward to chatting with you.
Thank you for having me, Amber. I'm so happy to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So for those of you that don't get to know what just happened, is that I've decided to video record my podcast. Now, whether this is actually going to hit the real world or not, Misa has been nice enough to navigate some troubleshooting with me as we do this for the first time. So thank you so much for your patience and being here. I really want to hear a bit about you that we didn't get to hear in your official bio. And then I would love to hear, why bookkeeping? Because for some people, they're probably like, put me in a quiet room and lock me up if I was to pick bookkeeping as my career. So I can't wait to hear your story and how you decided you're going to serve the world with this specific skill set.
Well, so many may or may not know that I actually came from corporate America. So I came out of the corporate world.
Yeah.
And while I was there, something I always noticed is that I would always say, who is managing these people's books? Because like, how are they double paying and overpaying? And it doesn't make sense because if people are managing and paying attention, it shouldn't happen.
Right.
So it worked out perfectly because I was already in corporate. I was working in the accounting department. So I have a good understanding and background of how like a corporation operates.
Mm-hmm.
And the decision to leave corporate it came because, well, one, COVID hit. And so
Mm.
I got to go home and work from home, which was amazing. And I had a little bit of extra time because
No
I'm not in the
travel,
office.
no
Yes, I'm not in
commuting.
the
Yeah.
office all day. And I knew I wanted to start a business, and bookkeeping just it connected the dots and it made sense. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm already in accounting, bookkeeping makes sense, but then I can actually like help businesses that need my help and really make a difference. Because in corporate, I mean, I can make a difference kinda.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Well, you get to see the person you're making a difference to.
yes,
I mean, when you say make a difference, this is why you're here. Like small
yes.
businesses have a huge challenge with bookkeeping, and we're going to talk about some of those, and we're going to, let them know that there is light, there is help at the end of that tunnel, and that really this is something that I believe all business owners need to either figure out on their own or partner with a consultant like yourself to get that, I actually saw in your Instagram, which is something that I say I stalk my guests before you come on. And it was like fill the gap. I think you said you had it on
Yeah.
your hand. And that is exactly what I believe is that it is our job as business owners not to know it all, but to fill a
Mhm.
gap and make sure our businesses have the support that it needs.
Exactly.
So yeah, all right. So you saw a need, you got a little taste of what it was like to work from home, which is really cool. I got a little taste of that when I was on maternity leave 14 years ago, and that's all it took
Mhm.
to start my business. So then you saw a need and you decided to launch the business. I'm just curious as a business owner, how did you know that the world needed this? Or were you like, cross my fingers, like, let's see what these services are? Yeah.
Well, I actually, because me being who I am and the bookkeeper in me, I
Yeah.
did a lot of research. So I was, digging around like bookkeeping, what type of business is this? What would I do? How does this work? And I actually came across someone, her name is Serena, and what she actually does is she helps people start bookkeeping businesses and
Oh,
finding people who are in corporate who are wanting to start a business. And so it all worked out
oh my
perfectly.
gosh. See, thank goodness for someone named Serena that helped fill that gap. I had no idea that even
Yeah.
existed.
And
Yeah.
it was perfect. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is exactly what I'm looking for." And so she helped to kind of really help me get the steps I needed in place to make sure that I'm starting on the correct foot and I'm doing
Yeah.
everything correctly. And I was like, "Wait a minute. This is perfect because I get to, work with numbers. I get to organize. I get this is fun for me."
Yeah. This is
But
your dream job, right?
this is so fun. But then I get to help people who are often overlooked. When you
Yeah.
think about small businesses, although there are so many of them, most people don't think about them
Yeah.
in the areas that they really need help. Like we hear about marketing, we hear about sales, we hear about all the fun stuff, but then when it comes to the boring stuff, the stuff
Yeah.
people don't really want to do,
Yeah.
that's where people kind of just sit it to the side. But it's like this is the foundation of your business. I'm like nothing else matters if your bookkeeping isn't in order. So that's where I'm like, I want
Yeah.
to get people excited. And that's what I always say. I want it to be fun, I want it to be easy, and I want it to be accessible because that's also an issue. Small businesses, they don't have departments like corporate. That's the big difference. Corporations have literal departments that handle all the
Right.
different pieces, but a small business, sometimes it's just a business owner and maybe a few team members. So making
Yeah.
sure that they're equipped just like a corporation is because it's still a business at the end of the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. So have you found that there's hesitation and just like, reaching out to you about the services? Like, okay, so I know, I'm in the trenches. I know there are so many business owners that need this type of service. Why do you think people are hesitant to raise their hand and say, I need help?
I think there's two main things that I see. One of them being there's this fear. It's just the fear of numbers. So it's like, I don't, I'm not good with math, or I'm not good with money. I don't know this. This isn't really my thing. And so there's just this fear. And so instead of like facing the fear and just, asking the question,
Yeah.
they'll just kind of sit back and not do anything about it.
Yeah.
And
Like
then,
head in the
yeah,
sand. Like,
and it's just like,
yeah.
I'm just going to ignore it.
Yeah.
It's although you can't really ignore it, because at some point you're going to have to face it, but that's usually what happens. And then on the flip side of that, there have been bad experiences. So within the accounting industry in general, it's usually not the best, because if you think of accountants and bookkeepers, they're probably not not the most personable people, because we're behind the
Yeah.
scenes. We just work behind the scenes. We don't really, you know, interact too much. And so a lot of times when a business owner has questions because they really don't know, they get met with a bad experience, or someone who's not willing to answer the question or help them. And
Yeah.
that's why I'm like, no, we need to take the time to answer those questions so that they can get on the right path, and they won't be confused, and then they won't be afraid. Like when they know you're not the only one making this mistake. Everyone is
Yeah.
making the same one. It's okay.
Yeah.
And
There's no
that's
shame
yeah,
around it. Like, it
there's
just,
no shame.
yep.
Exactly. And because that's the big problem, is if we can take away whatever that feeling is that's making them not want to face it, it's going to make it easier for them to actually approach it then.
Yeah, I agree. And just to piggyback on what you were saying about bad experiences, I have coached my clients many times over the years to have a higher standard. What I find is because this isn't their comfortable area of their business, which is numbers, they settle for subpar service. Like they're
Hmm.
not getting their P&Ls on a regular basis. They're not getting this relationship where they're being asked when there's questions. You have bookkeepers that are just making assumptions and they make a mess. And most of my clients that have experienced that is like, gosh, like I'm paying a lot of money here and I can make a mess of my own books if I really, I could do that myself instead of hiring it out.
Hmm.
And the thing that I've always said is like, there are good service providers out here. Here's what you should be expecting from someone that you're partnering with to have your books. Here are the numbers. Like you own these numbers. You can't be making decisions in your business without these numbers. This isn't just you're doing your duty to pay taxes.
Yep.
It's way more than that. This is a tool. It is a metric. It is information that you need in the business
Hmm.
to be making smart strategic decisions moving forward. And you can't do that if you're 2, 3, 4, sometimes 6 months and they've hired somebody behind in these numbers. They're way lag, right? They're already
Yes.
lag metrics, but I mean, we're talking way lag metrics. Like what does it matter once you get those numbers? So that is why I really wanted to, have that conversation here, is that one, if you're struggling and you don't have this as a skill gap, what are your options? Two, if you have support and you've just told yourself, it's fine, it's easier than finding somebody else, I wanted to give options of like what it could look like. So when I also was stalking your website, I noticed that the first service you actually share is to clean up bookkeeping
Hmm.
past. And I was like, that is so brilliant, because why do people not want this service? Is they're like, oh my gosh, like my books are a mess from 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, many years back. And so then it becomes this big giant monster in the closet. It becomes this thing that feels like I don't even know where to start. It doesn't feel like something that, well, it just feels like too much, right? And that's how it
Yes.
got to be that far, is that we keep saying it's just too much. And I think that is a great place to start always, is an audit, which is what you provide, and then a cleanup to get bookkeeping, their books current. Can you share a little bit about your experience and what do you see when you do these cleanups? We're keeping everybody anonymous with your clientele, but what I want is to not normalize that has to be that way, but I want people to not feel like they're alone and that this is why
Mhm.
they're not getting help. So what do you see when you do these audits?
So, one of the first things I see is small businesses, their books are actually simple.
Hmm.
When you think about comparing it to a corporation who has a ton of moving parts, a small business is very, very simple. So if they can keep up with their books, it's going to be easy to manage. It's when you kind of let it go month after month and year after year, that's when it gets overwhelming. But if you start from the beginning and you start putting those habits in place, it's going to be so much easier to manage. And that's one of the first things. But then one of the biggest issues that I find is that no one reconciles. And reconciling is literally comparing your bookkeeping system to your bank statements or whatever statement it is that you're needing to reconcile. And it's a key piece in bookkeeping because it's making sure that your numbers are actually accurate.
Yeah.
Because if you don't reconcile, you won't catch if there's duplicate transactions, or if maybe you entered something wrong, or if something's in the wrong place, you probably won't catch it. Or maybe you've been paying for a subscription for a year that you meant to cancel, but you didn't catch it. So it's little things like that because it's a very simple and easy piece of the process, but most people don't do it.
Yeah.
I talk about it all the time because I'm like, make sure that you're reconciling. Because when I go in and reconcile and I find issues and errors, and I'm like, let's correct this because your numbers are not right. And if your numbers aren't right, you can't use that information to make decisions. And that's the whole point of bookkeeping is we want it to actually be right so that you can use it. And that's also that's another thing is when your books aren't in order, you don't have the data. And you want the data so that you can use it and you can pull those reports and you can say, oh, January is a slow month. Why is January a slow month? And you can say, oh, this is just a slower time in my business. So that means I need to plan around January because I know it's a slower month. But you won't know that if you're not looking at the numbers because the numbers will they will talk to you. They will tell you. They will tell you exactly what's going on. You're like, wait a minute, why is, I'm not bringing in as much revenue right now. Well, maybe that month, maybe something happened that month. Maybe, you had some personal things going on. And so maybe you weren't pushing as you normally do. Like, then you can start connecting all the dots. And you can't do that if your books aren't in order. So if we can get them cleaned up, get them organized, then you can go in there and you can say, oh, okay. Now I see. Now I know. Oh, I've been pushing this service that's not really making money. But I have another service that makes more. So maybe I should put more effort into that. Those are all the different things that you can figure out just by having your bookkeeping up to date.
Yeah. So, all right. So then you do this audit, you do a cleanup, it comes current. And then something else that you were offering that I actually don't see frequently. And this is how I actually set up my own books, was I got support by a bookkeeper who helped set up the chart of accounts and set up the products and showed me how to do my own reconciling and how to do my own like bank downloads, right? But also reconciling the actual accounts. So doing the whole thing. And to me, my business was so small when I first started out. I wanted my bookkeeping right, but I could not afford someone else doing it. And so I invested in someone to teach me that. And I'll be honest, I've been in business almost 15 years and I still do my own bookkeeping. I do it twice a month. I do it on the 10th and 25th, give or take, depending on if it's a weekend. And the first one takes me an hour because I'm reconciling my accounts. And by the way, 10 to 15 minutes, I have 5 checking accounts in my business. I have credit cards, line of credit. And so just to say, like, you can have multiple accounts and still just knock it out. In my opinion, QuickBooks makes it very easy.
Yes,
and once you know what you're looking for. Now, with the caveat of it takes 10 to 15 minutes if it's all green check mark. But as soon as something's not a green check mark, you got to kind of know where you're at, right?
Exactly.
But to your point, you offer this service of being able to help set them up, coach them, train them, and then provide support, which I thought was also incredible and I don't see often, to empower the business owner to get this foundational skill set to serve the business. And then if your bookkeeping is taking more than an hour or 2 hours a month, then that time trade, it absolutely makes sense, in my opinion, to hire it out. So you came up with this service. Talk to me about what a typical client is. Is there a revenue point? They've been in business for a certain amount of years? Like, who is that service offering for?
That particular service offering is for the person who says they're like, I cannot afford a bookkeeper. Like I want it to be
Yeah.
done. I want it to be done correctly, but I'm just not at a point
Yeah.
to outsource to a
Yeah.
bookkeeper yet. And it's also for the new business owner. So when you're just getting started and you're trying to make sure you're doing things the correct way, it's a good way to, get on
Yeah.
that right path by making sure that you're following the correct steps and you're not skipping anything, because there are many things that people skip, and then it's like 2 3 years down the line you're like, wait a minute, you probably should have set this up from the beginning, and
Right.
then it would have been easier. Now that you're in year 3, it would have been easier. So it's typically for those business owners, because it's really up to you. If you're ready to outsource it, by all means, pay for
Yeah.
it and outsource it. But I do say, before you outsource it, make sure that you know what's supposed to be happening and what's going on. So
Yes.
I am a big, big fan of a business owner. If they have to DIY or if they're outsourcing, they should still be heavily involved as far as what's happening, knowing what's going on, and providing a little bit of oversight to their bookkeeper. Like,
Okay.
as the bookkeeper, yes, I might be in there doing the day to day, but as the business owner, these are your
Hmm.
books, these are your numbers. So
Yeah.
you want to make sure that they're right. You want to make sure, hey, Misa, I see that you categorize something as this. This was actually something else.
Yeah.
So it's a collaboration between the two of us. It's just I'm taking it off your plate so you're not doing it, but you're still involved. It's not
Yeah.
just, okay,
I
I have
agree.
a
I
bookkeeper.
mean, that sounds like an ideal client. And I am glad you said that, because even if you outsource it, you cannot be hands off, because last time I checked, bookkeepers weren't a mind reader.
Yep.
And so you have these charges coming in, and first of all, let's just edit that. You actually may not know what that charge is for, and
Yes.
you did it. And
Yes.
then your bookkeeper should just magically know how to categorize it. So let's have some compassion there and understand this is a partnership of information, really. So
Yes.
when you are teaching in your offering of like teaching a business owner, do you show them how to review their P&L and look for errors, and like what
Yes.
do the numbers mean? For me, that was the most powerful of like, oh, so this is actually a report for like information and data, but it's actually the key to know, if you're, to me, even more so than reconciling, in my own opinion, of like, is this actually correct information, of how is it categorized and what do these numbers mean to me?
Yes, that's actually my favorite part. And because
Okay.
because I walk through all the steps, so all the
Yeah.
steps that I take as a bookkeeper, that's what I walk them through. So you don't have to click all 100 buttons, just click these certain buttons. But then I do like to dig into, okay, now when you do everything else, now you actually want to review the reports, and showing them all the options that are available. And I'm like, this is why if you use a software like QuickBooks Online, you can run all these fun and cool reports and, look at your P&L, and then you can actually compare it. You can compare it by month, by year. And
Yeah.
there's all sorts of things that you can do that makes it actually helpful and not just generic. Because, if you sign up for QuickBooks, it's a very generic setup, but when you go in
Mhm.
there and you personalize it, so you separate all your different revenue streams. Now when you pull up that report, you can easily see, oh, this makes money. This one, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
But actually looking at that, and then like a good example I always like to use is like marketing expenses. So if you are, let's say for instance, you have someone that's helping you with your marketing in whatever capacity that is. Like I always tell people, especially when it comes to hiring people, you should be getting a return. And the way
Mhm.
you'll know is your revenue should be increasing. So if you're hiring someone with marketing, you're not getting calls, your revenue isn't increasing, like nothing's happening, there may need to be a conversation with the marketing person to figure out,
Yeah.
hey, what's going on? Because my marketing isn't working. Because
Yeah.
that's what you should see. Everything should be returning something, like even education. So if you're investing in a course, a coach, anything like that, you should see a return at some point. Like it may not be tomorrow,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
at some point you should see a return. And it shouldn't just be like, I've been paying this person for like 6 months to a year and nothing changed.
Yeah.
That's how you know it probably wasn't the best investment, because you should see that revenue increasing at some point.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts about having your expenses match the IRS categories or categories that actually make sense to a business owner?
So I like to personalize it. So we don't want the categories to just be like completely out of there where we're like,
Yeah.
I don't even know what it is, but we do want it to make sense for the business owner. So that's the
Hmm.
first thing that I always do is I'll set up usually like the kind of generic IRS categories. And then from there, we will personalize it. So it's like, okay, maybe you do have advertising and marketing as like an overhead account, but then let's break that down. What does the
Hmm.
advertising and marketing include? Do you want to actually track those separately? And that way, when you're looking at the report, it's not just, oh, it's advertising and marketing. No, it's my social media manager. It's my website. It's my ads, like the
Hmm.
actual ad spend. So you can actually see those different things. And
Yeah.
it all depends on the business owner. So sometimes there are things that they want to track that are a little bit more specific, or sometimes it's like, oh no, if it's advertising and marketing, I know what it is. Like I don't need to break it out. So it depends. So
Yeah.
like that's the famous accounting words. It
Yeah.
depends.
It depends. Yeah. It
It
depends.
depends. But I do say to personalize it to your business.
Yeah.
And to your business is what I always like to emphasize. Like it doesn't matter what anyone else is doing in their business. These books are for you. You want them to make sense to you. So personalize it as needed.
Okay, excellent. And that is a good answer. It depends. And I'm sure it depends on not just the business owner, the industry, like all of that good stuff. But I love to
Right.
hear that you want to customize it. I think that some business owners don't even know that that's an option. And so when
Mhm.
the IRS categories really don't make sense, or rather they make sense because they're so general, but they don't give the information the business owner needs, right? It doesn't actually tell the story or
Mhm.
answer the question. So for example, for us, I track everything for one example with to do with the podcast. I want to know what the ROI is on the podcast. And so of course you have your hosting expenses, like hard actual like tech expenses, but
Mhm.
then also I have my team break down their time on, I'm working in the business, or if I'm specifically working on the podcast, they invoice it separately so that I can then categorize it in
Mhm.
QuickBooks to know that this part of my labor is going towards podcasting specifically, since that's my biggest marketing strategy. And so I want to know that we're getting an ROI on that. So I actually lean more towards detailed, but that's my personality because I want specific questions answered. But I do love that if you as a business owner are not have a question that cannot be answered in your P&L, then maybe it's a category thing. Maybe it's you're not seeing the numbers in the way that makes sense to you. And so to go ask your bookkeeper, what can we do about this to see these numbers in a different way? Yeah.
Exactly. And something I'll add to is the beautiful thing about using a software like QuickBooks is all the data is in there. So if you
Mhm.
ever need to, like I run all kinds of reports for my clients, and as long as the information is there, we can. I mean, I love Excel, so I can throw something in Excel and play with it all day. And
Yeah.
so the information is always there, and it's just a matter of how do you want it to look.
Yeah.
And if you ever need to, you can always like export it or view it because when you're looking at the reports in QuickBooks, you can click on the numbers, like you can click on them and see what the detail of what's in there. So
Yeah.
it's a very interactive process, and it's not just, okay, I see a number here for advertising and marketing, but I have no idea what it is. You can actually look in and see exactly what it is.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, that's how I check to make sure things are categorized correctly. And
Mhm.
like you'll see this like outlier number and then you're like, I wonder what that is. And you click on it and something got categorized wrong, or you just forgot what it was. And so I love that double click for the detail on the P&L. All right, I want to just shift gears a little bit. You mentioned it already, but just talk a little bit about the place of technology in bookkeeping. So it sounds like you love QuickBooks Online.
Yes.
Yeah, why don't you share a little bit about that with us?
So I know me as a just personally, I am very tech savvy and I love technology. I'm
Yeah.
like, why not use it to,
Mhm.
make life a little bit easier? And when it comes to bookkeeping, I always encourage people to use the technology, even if it requires you to learn a little bit. Because if you don't have the background, you probably can't just log into QuickBooks and just know what you're doing. But once you understand it, then you're like, oh, wow, the world opens up to all the many fun features and things that you can do in there. And the beautiful thing about technology is it's going to help make your bookkeeping a little bit easier. Because I know a lot of times people will be like, well, I can just track it on a spreadsheet. And I say, yes, you can. You definitely can track it on a spreadsheet, but the spreadsheet will be limited. It will be
Mm-hmm.
limited. It's going to take your time. And as a small business, you don't have that much time.
That's
you don't have
right.
you don't
Don't
have
be
the extra
wasting
time to
time.
wait.
Yeah.
Exactly. You can use the technology to help do some of the bookkeeping for you, because like QuickBooks has features like you can set up rules and you can set up, your custom reports so that you can just click a button and run the report that you need. So it's
Yep.
so many features that you can use because you're using technology versus, pen and paper or like a spreadsheet.
Yeah. Or
Ab-
receipts in a
oh
shoebox.
yes, please. Oh yes, please. Yes, let's put those. Let's digitize those receipts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Because I know for me, it makes my life easier. So like even if we're talking about receipts, so I literally scan. If I get a physical receipt, I scan it in. I scan it and I
Mhm.
save it to my computer so that I can throw the physical receipt away, but I
Yeah.
have a copy. And because there have definitely been times where I was like, wait a minute, when did I bought something, but I have no idea what I bought or when I bought it. I was able to go find the receipt and I
Mhm.
was like, that's what it was. And I
Yeah.
make notes and everything. And that's that's what technology will do for you. It's going to make it easier. And we want to make life as easy as possible because we have limited time, limited resources, and whatever we can do to make it just a little bit easier, that's what we want to do.
Yeah, I have a little bit of an embarrassing story. I've shared it once for you longtime listeners of the podcast, but I had QuickBooks like the desktop version. And I have to tell you that I resisted the QuickBooks Online for way too long. And when I did, I felt like I heard angels singing. I was like, why did I wait this long? Like, why did I resist it? And to me, it was like, it's good enough. It's good enough. It's fine. It's fine. And then going to QuickBooks Online, I was like, it's like not even the same. It is, but it's not even like the same product. And there were so many features and it was so much easier to use. And so I'm talking this way, way years back. I also used to print out every receipt to your point, right? Like before digital. And now we're completely, digital. Everything gets saved. And, in this day and age, there's just very few actual receipts.
Yeah.
Well, in my business, there are very few actual receipts. Everything's coming in through email and online. And so we have a whole system for just saving those into files and how we name them so that they can be found and reconciled if anything was questioned with the IRS. But we had to make that decision. Like it was a project of saying, okay, so
Mhm.
here's how we organize literal paper in my office of receipts to, okay, what's the next tech, what's the next technology, which then created at what's the next process and who on the team is handling it now that it's digital, which
Mhm.
by the way, when you don't have paper in your office, your virtual team can help you a lot more with your bookkeeping,
Yes.
turns out. So what is happening now is when you hear it is like, my advice is don't resist it. On the other side of that is a lot more efficiency, time
Mhm.
saving. You're keeping up with how it can best serve your business.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So, what are some common bookkeeping mistakes that you see business owners make?
Ooh. The top mistake is not separating their business and personal finances. So
Hmm.
a lot of times, especially when, business owners are getting started, they'll just be like, well, I'm just going to use, my personal account because, there's not much happening.
Yeah.
But you're now starting a bad habit because
Hmm.
when your business picks up and you're like forced to open another account to kind of make things easier to navigate and understand,
Yeah.
now you're going to be like, oh, there's a lot of stuff happening and commingling in my personal account. And had I just opened the business account from the beginning, it would have been so much easier. And you would get into the habit of saying, okay, this is my business account. All
Yeah.
the business activity happens over here. And all my personal activity happens in my personal account. But it also makes your bookkeeping easier because if you have a dedicated business account, even if you didn't touch your bookkeeping all year, I don't recommend,
Mm.
but even if you didn't, if you just have that one business account that you know all of the biggest business activity is in, it's going to be so much easier to get those books up to date versus trying to shuffle and figure out what happened in your personal account. Because
Yeah.
I know when I see that, because I usually ask them, like, do we have any personal accounts that some transactions might be in? And they're like, oh yeah, I probably mixed things on like a few different accounts, and then they don't actually want to go digging through. And that's the whole point.
Mhm.
Because who
Yeah.
wants to go back,
Yeah.
months to figure out, oh, I think I spent some things on there. So they're missing out on some deductions that they could get for their business. So I'm like, if you don't do anything else, just separate your
Yeah.
business and personal and make it as easy as possible for you. So if you're someone like, well, I need to make sure I can access, the funds when I need to, make sure the account is with the same bank or
Yep.
the bank has the option to, easily transfer. That's like keep it as simple as possible, but keep the accounts separate.
Yeah. I was
That's
I was a big dork. Like, I had a bank account before I had a client because to me that was like, okay, check. Like, I'm a little bit more official. But I do see that. I do understand that. And really it's because they're just like, and to their like credit, they're like, just go make money. Just open the business. We'll figure out the rest later. And
Mhm.
newsflash, you never just have the time later. If you didn't have time before you had clients, now that you got clients, you're like, oh yeah, and let me go to the bank and open up an account and separate these things. Like, just do it now. And if you haven't, I agree. Let's just start fresh. Just
Yes.
open that account. All
Yes.
right. What is another mistake that you see business owners making?
Another big mistake is not dedicating the time to bookkeeping.
Mm,
So things get busy, things happen, and the first thing that they sit to the side is the bookkeeping.
yeah.
And I'm like, no, 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 no. That's not the thing you want to sit to the side. You want to actually pick it up, actually, because
Hmm.
if your business is picking up and the revenue is flowing and all the expenses are happening, you really need to know what's going on and what's happening so that you're making the right decisions going forward. And
Yeah.
you're not, spending money on things that you don't need to because it's probably not bringing in revenue. And I know for a lot of people, it's hard to be like, well, like, I don't even like this. It's not fun, but find a way that works for you. So if you just need to hire a bookkeeper, that is the option.
Yeah.
If it's okay, well, let me take the time to learn it. So get some help so I can learn how to do it. And I'm going to put some time on my calendar. This will be my bookkeeping time. Do
Yeah.
that. If you need to do it in a community, say, hey,
Mm,
you have some business friends, you say, hey, let's do our bookkeeping together because maybe it's going to be helpful to have some people with you. So it's not just like I'm afraid and I don't know what's going
yeah.
on. I can work with, a fellow friend and we can do our bookkeeping together. So just
Yeah.
finding a way that's going to make it fun. So it's not just like "Ugh, bookkeeping. It's yay,
Yeah.
it's bookkeeping. Let's get this done.
All right.
That's
I think you're a bit optimistic here, but I'll give it to you. I mean, I'm going to parent our listeners as I parent my 14-year-old son. So Sunday morning's conversation was, I don't like doing dishes. Now the kid's done them since he was 7. Like, this has been his chore, right? But he's 14. I don't enjoy it. It's not fun. I don't know who would actually enjoy doing dishes. My husband and I said, actually, we don't care if you enjoy doing dishes. You're going to have to do a lot of things in life that suck. You're going to have to do it with a good attitude. You're going to have to do it with a good work ethic, and you're going to have to show up. Now, do you need to dance your way to our sink? No, we're not asking for that. But we are asking for you to show up consistently, do a good job, and understand that on the other side of things that suck is actually positive things. Now, for
Mhm.
him, my husband said, you get to eat on clean dishes. That was his, I don't know if that was enough of a carrot, but in business, what is on the other side is that you
Mhm.
feel empowered. I just
Yes.
want to say that. And on the other side of that is less stress, because whether you want to ignore it or not, there's this little fire starting that shows up into this big fire around April 15th
Yep.
every year.
Yep.
It's just like this little ticking time bomb. And so we don't want to run our businesses in a state of anxiety and overwhelm and stress. And
Mhm.
ignoring your books is doing that, whether
Yes.
you're conscious of it or not conscious of it. And so the carrot I would share is like, get empowered, get the support so that it's fun to do. I don't know. I can't say that. But like you're not avoiding it. You're not, dreading it. But now it can be something that you're at least neutral about. Is just something that we get to do as adults is file our taxes with accurate information because our books are correct.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right.
I'll add one more thing to that as far as like getting support. I find that a lot of people are afraid to ask. So they have a question or they're like, there's something they want to know, but they're afraid to ask. And I'm like, ask the question. Find someone that makes you feel comfortable enough to ask and that they'll answer, but ask the question so that you can get the answer. And most likely there's someone else with that same question. So who knows? You could probably ask the question and then your friend probably has the same question and now you can share that information with them.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to ask. Just raise your hand, say I have a question and find someone who will answer it for you. If they don't want to answer it, that's probably not the best person for you, but find someone who will answer and then you can feel a little bit more confident as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know a lot of business owners did not go to school to be a business owner. They didn't go to college to be a business owner. I can tell you that my degree is actually in business management. And I was 20 years old when I was taking these accounting classes that I thought were ridiculous. I could not connect any dot to my future. And so I'm sure I did good, but I didn't dive into it of like, oh, I need this knowledge for when I'm doing my own books. So whether you went to school or not, like we have questions. I had questions. Like I didn't leave these couple courses that were required in accounting to get my degree and be like, great, I feel so confident as a business owner to now just, dive into my books and understand it, and that's one, but also understand the technology of like QuickBooks. They weren't even talking QuickBooks when I went to college. So there's that. And so to your point, no matter you went to school, you didn't, like, look, you have this amazing service to provide with the world. And to do that, we need help. And so raise your hand, ask for help, ask the questions.
Yes.
All right. Are there any others that you wanted to share today before we wrap up?
Just, you got to do it.
There you go. We just talked for 40 minutes and the end is, look, you just need to do it, which is some straight talk.
But I will just also just kind of go back to saying that you're not just doing your bookkeeping for tax time. It's something that you want to do year round because you're actually using that information to run your business. And then it's going to make tax time easier. So you won't have to scramble. You won't be stressed. You can just say, oh, my books are already up to date. I can just hand it over to my tax accountant. And that's what we want. We don't want anyone to be stressed out or freaking out when the, tax time comes around. We want them to be at ease and we don't want the extra that comes with tax season.
Yeah. So I'm going to also close out with one observation around a reason to have your bookkeeping in order. And that is because we lie. Our brains lie to us. We tell stories. They can be the most elaborate stories and they could be, oh my gosh, I'm so busy, so things must be good in the bank accounts. And then there could be other times where you're like, oh, the phone stopped ringing. And so you're just thinking there's no money. And so now you're making decisions that may not be true either. There may still be cash flow with current clientele. And now you're like, cut this. Maybe I can't afford a team member. Maybe we need to cut hours. But are you actually making those decisions based on data or how we feel? And I don't know about you, but I feel different every day, maybe multiple times a day. And that is not a good place to be making business decisions from.
No, it's not.
Okay. All right. So the numbers are essential for that. Great. So since we're on a theme of me stalking you on your website, you do have this free opt-in. It's a checklist. Or maybe you had something else. I'm not sure, but I would love for you to share any resources and then let our listeners know how they can find you and reach out to you about your services.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. So yes, I do have a free bookkeeping checklist. And so it's not just a checklist. It is a checklist in there, but I also give some good information as far as getting things set up and what you should be doing, what to look for to kind of get you started. And you can find me on my website, so perfectlykept.books.com. And I have all sorts of things on there. I have a blog with all types of information that I like to share, and a
Good.
resources page that gives you any resources that I have available to you. And then something that I'm really, really proud and excited about is I actually created a membership community where
Oh.
people who are DIYing and want access to a bookkeeper, they can get access to me through this membership community. I wanted a place to just throw all of my resources and just put everything in one place. So I've created a place just for that. And then people don't have to worry about not being able to afford a bookkeeper. They can still get access to one and get their questions answered and get their books in order.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. I did not see that when I stalked you, but I'm so glad you shared that. It sounds like that's the community piece too. So do
Yes.
you do the co-working in there that you were speaking of?
Yes.
Okay, that's
Yes.
great. I did co-working for many years inside my group coaching program as well. And that was one of the favorite things that people liked. And it wasn't that you're like sharing your screen of like what's in your bank
Right.
account. It's that, I don't know how you run it, but it was like we're on Zoom, we set an intention, everybody goes into their work. And if there's questions get answered. So is that
Exactly.
similar? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So what you're doing is creating intentionally that external accountability, which we know
Yes.
here at the podcast is really crucial to getting things done that
Yes.
suck, that we don't like,
Yes.
and have to get that in the business. So,
Yes.
all right. And maybe even make it a little fun because as business owners, one of the things that we feel is that it's kind of lonely. Like
Yes.
many times it's lonely. And
Mhm.
so building that community to do something like that is incredible. So yeah, to learn more about your services and your membership and get resources, your website is Perfectly Kept Books. Correct.com.
Yep,
And
that is
we
correct.
will be linking out to that in the show notes and to the resources that were shared. Thank you so much for sharing, some good details about how we can empower ourselves to keep good books.
Thank you so much for having me. This was such a fun conversation.
Awesome. I have loved having you listen to this episode of the Small Business Straight Talk podcast. And I sure hope you found my conversation with Misa to be valuable and empower you to take back control of your financial organization. Whether you do this on your own or you ask for help and hire a bookkeeper to partner with you in getting your books in order, I highly recommend this. There is so much to be learned from the numbers and, putting your head in the sand and avoiding the numbers just isn't going to serve you or your business. We don't want to blindly be making decisions in the business, unknowing how those decisions are going to affect your financials or how your financials are going to and should affect those decisions. Financial organization is something that many people do not talk about. Disorganization, owing your taxes, not knowing how much you're making in revenue, what are your true expenses, what is your profitability, what is your take-home pay. I have never met a business owner that has taken the time to prioritize financial organization and to better understand their own bookkeeping and numbers and financials and has not felt better off for it. No client of mine has ever regretted that time investment of doing so. So I am encouraging you that no matter where you're at in your journey, whether you are in QuickBooks or have no QuickBooks, whether you're organized but don't understand your financial reports, or you do understand your financial reports, you're organized, but it's taking too much time of your time to be doing your own bookkeeping. No matter where you're at on this journey, I am encouraging you to leave this episode and take one step forward. What is one step you can take on your entrepreneurial journey and thus your financial organizational journey to feel more in control and like you have the financial information that you need to make confident decisions in your business? No change, no change. Without taking action, nothing will change for you or your business. So decide today, right now, before this episode ends, what is the one next step you can take on that journey? And before we close out, I just want to let you know that the new year is coming and 2025 is here. If you are looking to hire a business coach that can help you with productivity, time management, business systems, efficiency, leading your team, strategic decision making, if you would like a partner in 2025 to do new and exciting things in your business and feel like you are not alone, then I invite you to head on over to amberdelagarza.com/coaching. You can learn more about my one-on-one coaching, as well as book a discovery call so that we can chat and find out if coaching is the next right step for you and your business. Head on over to amberdelagarza.com/coaching. And if you are new here, I just want to say welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss another episode. And if you have enjoyed today's episode, please let me know. Leave a review wherever you're listening to this episode and let me know your feedback. So that's my straight talk for today. Until next time, have a productive week.